And hello everyone, welcome to today's training session, which is actually the last of our scheduled training sessions for the year so far. And this week we're going to be looking at simple APIs within Races.12. And those of you who know me already will probably know that this is one of my favorite topics to play with. Without further ado, our schedule for the day. First, we're going to be looking at what are APIs, understanding what they're used for, why we have them, and what they are used for beyond Races as well. We'll take a look at simple APIs, the most basic version. We'll then start adding some custom parameters to those simple APIs before moving on to fully custom APIs within Races.12 and a few examples of what can be done with them. So what are APIs? API stands for Application Programming Interface, and essentially it's a way of talking to another piece of software. So normally between a third-party platform, in the example I've got there, Zwift or Garmin can auto-post to Strava, and that uses the API from Strava to upload the data to your profile via an API. So essentially they allow for custom applications around the main software package for whatever you might want to use them for. A simple API within Races.12 is essentially a URL which will trigger a function of some sort, whether that's loading an output list, changing a parameter, or etc., etc. So within Races.12, we have the API interface, which is your web server. There is an API cache as well above that when you're working online, but essentially it goes to the web server. The web server in the middle can call data from the Races.12 database. So that would be your sports event server, and then can forward that to a desktop app, mobile app, or web interface. So you're never talking directly to the sports event server. The web server or the API server in the middle is doing that for you and shares the data where it needs to go. How does that work? Well, essentially, all that you need to do is you open a URL. The URL is configured within Races.12 to do something, and that URL will recall the requested action from the sports event server, and the API server will return that response to you. So if you set it up to return a list, the API server will load that list from the sports event server and return it to you. Simple. Now, there are some considerations to take when you're using simple APIs within Races.12. As I mentioned, there is that API cache in between, and that will cache the response that comes from the sports event server. Essentially, that means that if you're pulling a live list of data, that may be cached for up to around 30 seconds is the maximum, normally a bit less. So you won't see any updates. So it's pointless polling it every every half a second if you're just trying to load a results list, because you're just going to get the same data back. When you're setting up APIs, they do use English field names, particularly when you're using custom APIs. And we do now apply a rate limiting for APIs, for simple APIs. This means that each unique API URL can be called once per second from each unique server. So if you're running a web app on your own server, and again, if you're trying to call it more than once a second from your server, then you will receive a 406 error saying that's not allowed. There must be at least 1 second between each API call. That doesn't apply if you have different locations calling it. So if I opened it and you opened it exactly the same time from my computer and your computer, we could both call the API. It does apply per IP address, okay? So some considerations to make there when you're developing apps around the simple API. Some example uses of APIs within Races.12. It may give access to a specific list of data. This may be for live TV, for example, if they want to have a leaderboard for live TV or something like that. You could get some event file statistics if your website or organizer, you want to load some statistics from your event file. You could even insert participants. So if you are using your own registration, you could insert them via an API. And or some custom applications as well. So equestrian judging, the judges assign points to the riders. You could build your own custom platform to enable that to be done more easily. Yeah, it's a very specific thing, not something we would build, an equestrian judging scoring platform into races.12 most likely. It could be done, but if you wanted something custom, you could do it with an API. So first, we're going to look at a simple API. So when we're setting up APIs, you'll find them under the main window, and there is a section for access rights and simple APIs. And do note that this will only be shown if you're the event file owner. You can't give access to these. So main window APIs. This has got a few. So you can see all the APIs I've set up in this event file here. When you're setting them up, there's a few different settings. First, you will select the type of API you're going to be publishing. That can be a list, which is a predefined output you already have set up. It could be a statistics set, again, from the statistics you set up in your output window. That could be event settings. So these are event name, event date, etc. A counter, which we will look at a bit closer in more detail later on, don't worry. It could be a custom API, or we do have an API for RaceMap if you're using their tracking visualization platform. Within each type, you then have the details. So within list or statistics, that is selecting the output list you want to publish. With custom, you will write the API details in here. You then have the output format if you're using a list. You have text, PDF, JSON, CSV, maybe one more. And then you can label it. Labels are pretty useful if you've got a lot of APIs. In that event file I just briefly showed you, there's quite a few. Sometimes if you want to track down a particular thing, it can be very easy to label them so you know what each one's doing and you're not having to cross-reference the link. Finally, on the right, you have the links. And the web server will generate links for both online, so that will be an online URL, and a local URL. So if you are working just offline and you want to access this through a local API, you can do so as well. The local link is not shown if you're working online, in case you're wondering. So first we'll look at a list. So as I mentioned, you will select the output list you want to publish. You will then select the format, text, JSON, HTML was the one I forgot, PDF, XML, and CSV. And then we label it. And as a note, if you are using the PDF, it will publish that PDF using the output page settings. So set it up nice and fancy in your output page settings, and that will be shown in your published API as well. As mentioned, that will then give you two URLs, the local URL if you're working offline, and the web URL, which will look something like this, api.races.com/your event ID, and a unique API key afterwards as well, which is a randomly generated key. And if I open that link up, and hopefully this is going to open in the right browser. Yes, it is. Good. Always a question which window it's going to open in. Here you can see the API. This is that final results list published in text format. And we have our columns, our groupings, and our data. So if I know that format, I can take that, do something with it, stick it in my own table on my website if I wanted to, or something like that. Nice and simple. Similarly, if I have a statistics, I can select the statistics that I want to publish. And I can do those again as PDF or XLS. It would download as an Excel. The label, and this one should be set to PDF. And if I open that up, then here we have, hopefully nice and quickly, my internet's not doing too badly today, a lovely PDF of all of the club statistics in this event file. So if you wanted to give some statistics to your organizer, then you could publish a statistics list via an API, give them the link, and they can get it as a PDF, nice and easy to go so they can keep track of things themselves. A settings API, as I mentioned, this is your event settings, okay? So event name, event date, and they use the English setting names. So that can be different from the field name as well. Here you'll see it is not using dot logic, it is event name and event date. separated by a comma. And that looks a little bit like this. So here I have the event name is API demo, I'm doing, and I have the event date, which for some reason this event file was in 2018, but it was a copy of another one that I used for a demo. So there we have our settings. So again, if you're doing a list of events on your own website and you want to be able to pull in the name and the date, you can get that data nice and easily as well. Now, a counter is really useful. It's kind of similar to statistics in a way, but it's purely a number. This is the number of participants who are registered within all contests, or you can filter that by the specific contest if you want. So again, if you want to show how many participants are registered on your website, you can do a counter API, open that one up, and we should get back a nice simple number, 2,852. Sounds like the demo event to me. So we've looked at simple APIs and the very basics of publishing an API and what we can get from them. But we can append additional parameters to those URLs to apply additional filters or rules if we need to override certain things. So that could be a filter, it could be custom formatting. And these parameters are appended to the end of the URL. And when you're doing so, you need a question mark and an ampersand. So question mark and multiple parameters can also be applied separately. So you have ampersand and the parameter. Note that when you are using such parameters, some things may need to be percent encoded. This depends on the application you're building mainly. And what that means is that in a URL, you may have seen, if you ever have a space or something, it will be replaced by %2c, if I'm not mistaken. And a web server will interpret %2c as a space. So square brackets around field names, for example, quotation marks may need percent encoding. Not everything does, but it's worth remembering when you're building your application. These parameters also cannot override any predetermined parameters, and that's important partly for security and partly also so you can't do anything too stupid with those. So if we've got a list API, we could append the parameters and bib equals, and that would load for just a single bib. We can filter by just a specific contest using and contest equals. We could change the text separator, so with a semicolon, a /, whatever you wanted it to be. Or we can apply a custom filter. So these filters will apply on top of your output list that you already have set up. And I have some examples. So here I have just a simple list. I believe it's the same one we looked at earlier with the final results. And here you see the URL ends. It's a little bit hard to follow because it is so long, but I've put all the parameters in red. Question mark and bib equals 1. If I open that link now, sorry, there is a lot of flicking between here, but it works okay. You'll see in our API, we now only have, and I'm looking at the wrong screen. That is our bib in this case. We have rank and then bib. So we have bib is equal to 1. That's nice and simple. Flicking back, my next filter says only give me contest equals 2. I open that up, then hopefully, and I can click the link. Come on. There we go. Here now we have only the half marathon. Did I keep it open? I did. So this was the original, which starts with a marathon, which was contest 1. And here we only have contest 2, which is the half marathon. So now I've got a filter nice and easily by bib or contest. I can also change the separator. So now my next one uses 2 parameters. I want contest equals 2, and I'm going to change the separator to a /. Don't know why, but easy to show. So I'll just go back to the previous one. This is contest 2. The separator is a semicolon. This is the new one, exactly the same, but the separator is now changed to a /. And finally, I can apply a filter. So this works as any other filter within races.12. But we need the full expression. So gender equals M in quotation marks. Remembering that from our expressions a couple of weeks back. And now we have only the males. So marathon males, if I do a Control F for female, there are no results found. So those are just some simple parameters we can apply onto our simple APIs. We can also change the file path. This is particularly if you're using PDF or Excel. So if you want to download an output as an Excel file, you can also put question mark and file name equals. And if you put file name.xls, it will download automatically as an Excel file. If you put PDF, it will download automatically as a PDF. So by doing this, it will automatically download that file with that name. So if you've got an organizer who you just want them to be able to download the file, they just have to open it up and you'll see it will load. And then hopefully you'll see it's downloaded as a PDF down here. That's 3.pdf because I still have it from last time. And there's my PDF ready to go. So if you want to download as a PDF or Excel straight away, then you can use question mark and file name equals with your file name. Now we get into the slightly more complex part. I don't see any questions, so hopefully everybody's still keeping up with me okay. Custom APIs. Now, custom APIs follow a very similar pattern to appending parameters to our simple APIs, but we have a little bit more control over what they do. So when we're looking at a custom API, we select custom API, and we have two different parts of the API to set up. We have the API call, which is highlighted in yellow here, and we have some parameters. Okay, now the parameters are not always applicable, but normally applicable. And actually, if you select an API, so for example, here I selected the output list final, and you change it to custom, you'll actually see the custom API, which is being called for that, created for you. So if you want to take that and do a little bit more with it, play with it a bit more, you can do so by changing it to custom, or we will look at in a minute some other fully custom APIs you can set up. So here, again, we can append parameters internally, and we can also append them to the URL. So here I have lists/create, list name equals online final. Okay, you'll see the % encoding here. And I'm not defining a format here. I'm defining the format in the URL. I'm saying question mark and format equals PDF down here. And again, if I open this one up now, then we should have our API link, our final list open as a PDF. I didn't make it very pretty for you, I'm afraid, but this is the same one we were looking at before. Our final results list, this is a PDF. Okay, so that's a very basic version, just converting a simple API to a custom API. But of course, we're not here for that. We're here for truly custom APIs, where you can do almost anything you like within your event file. So a few of the basic ones, we have /get, which can load event data. There's a few different varieties of /get, which we'll look at. Data/count. Now this is pretty much the same as the counter, but a bit more flexible. We have data list, which sounds like it's going to be an output list, but it's not. You'll see, don't worry. That lists participant data. We then also have part/savevalue, so participant save value, and participant save fields. And these are used to update or insert participant data. So /get, I think I made these clickable links, I did. So we have raw data /get, which will, believe it or not, return all of the raw data in our event file. I'm just going to open all of these up in my window above, and I'll flick them afterwards so you can see. We have contests/get, which will return a list of all of the contests we have set up, as well as their settings. Oh, sorry, I was trying to click that link. Oh, go to the next slide. We have splits/get, which will return our split settings. We have fields/get, which will return the data of all of our additional fields. Okay, so There's a few more than that, but those are kind of the main ones you'd want. And if I now flick up to a browser, this is the raw data get. So you can see all of the raw data that's in the event file. Now, admittedly, this is all a race sim in this file, but you can see all of the data here. We have contests. So contest ID 1 is the marathon, age start, the length down here. This is all of the contest settings. We have splits. So this is all of our splits with the contests they are assigned to, the name, the timing point, backups, etc., etc. And fields. So these are the additional fields that are set up: t-shirt, pre-event email, finish SMS, the type they are, the group they are, and any config that may apply. So the pre-selection values for a drop-down are up here. Now these get APIs are particularly useful if you're developing an app and you want to have everything synced up between your own results app and race.12, so you have the same data in both places. Okay. And I am just going to close a few tabs quickly because my browser's getting a little bit sluggish. Next, we have count. Count, as I mentioned, is very similar to the counter, may even be the same one that's used internally. And this will count participants, but we can then apply a filter to filter as we want. So rather than just filtering by a contest or all contests, this one here should open up as it's set up. So here I am looking for, sorry, I should have shown that a little closer. We have data/count, and the filter is first name equals Aaron. Okay, and for some reason in this file, there are 6 participants named Aaron. If I now append some additional parameters to this, again, I can apply my filter separately here. So I did this set this up separately to show you can apply the parameters either within the API or externally. I'm looking at filter first name equals Aaron and contest equals 2. I open this one up, we should get a different number back, and this number is 3. So there are 3 Aarons in contest number 2. Okay. See, custom APIs are not particularly complex, but they allow you to do a little bit more than just the simple APIs. Data list. This is probably the most commonly used API, custom API. It allows you to list participant data. Now, the difference here is that if you look at the variables, you're not calling an output list, you're setting the fields, the sorting and the filtering and the formatting within the API setup itself. So this will just return a list of the fields you want without everything that comes in between. So fields, sorting, filter bib, believe it or not, that's just a quick filter for the bib, general filter, list format, the same as we had before, and separator. So here's an example. I have a custom API, data list, and fields equal first name, comma, last name, comma, gender. This returns to me a list of all of my participants, first name, last name, and gender. So here we go. And I haven't set the format or anything in here, but we have each participant in what looks to be a JSON here. If I now have a look and take that a little bit further, I'm actually defining, sorry, I did use the same one. That's why it's JSON. Here I'm defining the list format as JSON. So again, I can append those parameters within the custom API setup, or they can be appended afterwards. So I'll skip that one because it's the same. But if I now go and filter bib equals 100, it will filter to bib equals 100. And there we go. There's exactly the same format of data, first name, last name, gender for bib 100. Now, finally, if I additionally append and list format equals PDF, you'll importantly notice this does not override the list format. Okay, so up here, even though I've said list format equals PDF, it's still returned as a JSON. This is important because if you had a data list with your field names defined here, you want to give someone access to first name, last name, gender, they couldn't override that to then call date of birth, address, email, phone number, etc., etc. So a bit of a security reason behind that one as well. But that simple API, the parameters here will not override what's in your custom API. Participant save value or part/save value updates a single field for a single bib. Okay, this requires 3 variables. It requires the bib you want to change, it requires the field name you want to change, and it requires the new value. Okay, optionally, you can append no history equals 0, will update anyway, that's the default. Or if you set it to 1, it will not update the history. So within race result 12, we have our participant history. We can define if you want that to update or not. And in this example here, I have part/save value, field name equals status, and value equals 4. Now, if I did that here, it would probably do it for everyone. I wouldn't recommend that. But what I will do is I will append the bib to the URL. So I can set the bib to be changed within the URL parameters, and it will only do it for bib equals 1. And I actually have bib number 1 prepared up here. And hopefully no one's been playing with it. No, they haven't. So here you can see bib number 1, status is currently regular. I'm going to click the API link in the presentation, and that will open up. Here's the API. Turn 0. That is good. I reload now, that status has changed. Okay, so very easy way to change a single field. Also, if you want to change a bib via an API, this is the way to do it. Old bib, field equals bib, new value. Okay. But what if we want to update more than a single field? Well, for that, we have part/save fields. This can do a bulk update of multiple fields for multiple participants. Now, this uses a post request, which means I can't just do it in the browser. It's a little bit different. With a post request, there is a post body, which is sent with the URL call, and the participant data is in that post body in JSON format. Okay. So if you're also inserting participants, you may also need to get the next bib number. You can do this using part/new and first free. If you return first free equals 1, it will get the lowest available. If you go first free equals 0, it just takes the highest bib plus 1. You can also append and contest equals X to consider the bib number ranges per contest. Now, it is important to note here, if you're doing this, those cached false. If you try and use this to return a bib, that response will be cached. So I don't recommend using this on any sort of large scale, but it can be useful to get a reference, and then you can keep track of it on your own platform from there. Okay? So it can be useful, but just be aware of it. So when we're setting it up, we just have part/save fields in our custom API setup. And here's an example JSON of what we would send in the post body. Okay, so bib, this would insert bib 9999. Yep, that was cool. The last name, first name, date of birth, sex or gender, and contest. Okay. Now, if I posted this data to the URL, that would insert bib 9999. Or I can have multiple participants within a JSON array separated by commas with each participant. So if I've got all of my participants, send them in one, I can do that using participant/save fields. Okay. Now you can actually append the bib to this. So you could have the bib as part of the URL parameter and exclude it from here. But you just need to be a little bit careful with that, because if you try and change the bib in this way, you could run into errors. I don't recommend it. I generally recommend keeping track of your bib separately and having the bib included in your JSON array here. Okay. I haven't got this set up as an example in Postman. Those of you who understand post requests will understand this. If you do require additional support, feel free to email us and we can point you in the right direction. I'm going to assume there's no questions currently. If not, I do have, of course, a little example website set up where I'm using a bunch of different APIs to show you some of the things you can do with APIs, to give you maybe some ideas on what you might want to do with them and how you can use them. Now, this example that I've got set up was one I made for an event back in 2019 when events were actually a thing, and it uses a few different things. So without further ado, we shall jump in and have a look. I'm not going to be showing any specific API calls that I make in here. This is more just to give you an idea of what's possible. Within my output list, my results list here, I have a custom link, and that allows me to actually do something like this. Hopefully it works. Yep, it's working still. I haven't broken it totally. Okay, I need to just formatting on the time. That's strange. But here is a graph of all of the lap times for all participants within an event. So this is a 25-hour event. The data's been trimmed off, so it's not the full 25 hours. But I can see each lap time as well as the average lap time for the team across there. This was 1, 2, 3 different sets of APIs, maybe 4. One to get the names, one to get all the lap times, one to get the average, and I think actually a separate one for the color for each bar as well. So 4 different APIs powering that, but to give you an idea, I did also do a donut that does load. So this is how many laps each participant in the team had done, which on the day wasn't actually all that interesting because most teams were pretty uniform. So that was good fun. We could also have something like a rider lookup. So I can enter the bib number here, bib 11. I can look that bib up. And if everything's still working, yep, here we have that data. So this is just a list data. And I'm just putting that into, actually this is an output list, and I'm just putting that into my own table. I have a status change. So similar to the status change simple API we had, I set up a dropdown with a button to change status. And I could also add the comment field. So this will add, this will set the value of the comment field to whatever it was before. New demo, save, and if I look that up now, the comment is add comment and new demo. So quick way to do a lookup. So if you were doing, like I said, something like equestrian or other things where you want custom scoring or a custom dashboard, you could do that. That looks up by bib. I even have using the match, which is in the knowledge base, the ability to look up by name. So here, everyone by whose name is John. So I could look up where they are, their bib number, which team they're representing. Certificate. So this isn't technically a simple API because you can call this through the published certificates anyway. But if I have a look here, and if I open up that, it will load some details, or if I click print, it actually opens a new tab with the certificate. So that could be a certificate link. In this case, it was a medical report. We didn't actually use this, don't worry, there's no real medical data here, but it gives you an idea of what could be done. That could be expanded for a team registration if you wanted. So if I could look up my team, again, I can change all of the data. So the team name and team fields here, you say value and do a post request to update everybody within the team. And here I update individual participants, again, using that post request to send all of the fields in one. Actually, when I first wrote this, I did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different single API calls. Wasn't very efficient. Now it's a single call to update each one. You could load your own statistics. This one, I think, was actually an output list or a few output lists I set up. But you could publish your own statistics on your website. So here we had how many riders are on course, the total lap count, and who had the fastest lap so far. This was actually flagging those who hadn't been seen. This is updating a little bit more regularly. Using some custom JavaScript on my website. Gives you an idea of what can be done. That's just some of the stuff. There's a lot of people using simple APIs for different things, mainly for this kind of custom lookup where you want to be able to change data, look up data. TV could take this data and put in a leaderboard, for example. But that just gives you an idea on what APIs could be useful. Not seeing any questions, so I'm hoping everyone's inspired to use some simple APIs on their website, or maybe develop their own applications around APIs. If there's no questions, then it's been a relatively short session today, but hopefully interesting for you to see what can be done with APIs and give you some ideas of what you can do with them. As always, if you have any questions, then please feel free to reach out to our support team and we can point you in the right direction. If you have any other custom APIs you want, we haven't covered all of them here. They're not all covered in the knowledge base. There are just too many to document, and some also come with caveats and catches. But if you have something you have in mind, feel free to reach out and we can also point you in the right direction there. Otherwise, I wish you all a very good day or good evening if you are with us in Asia or Australia or New Zealand. And I'll see you again for our next round of online training, whenever that may be. Thank you and goodbye.